I lived 45 minutes down the peninsula, a ride close to Stanford University. And so, but I went up there if Lindsay and I weren't playing, then I went up to San Francisco, to Winterland, or to the Family Dog, or to the Fillmore. And we played the Fillmore. And we opened for probably every huge band you can imagine, from Jimi Hendrix to Janis Joplin to Chicago to... my mind goes blank because there was 3.5 years of we played every Friday and Saturday and Sunday, and we opened for big shows like Santa Clara Fairgrounds, you know. So
And what was it like?
it was incredible.
Was it
I mean,
weird?
I wouldn't, I wanted to be a rock and roll star from the old school. I never, ever have wanted to be trendy or new. And I'm not new, and I'm not trendy. And I mean, I remain in those days. Sometimes I'd probably live in the past a little bit too much. Now when I go back, I still remember why I wanted to do this. In the song Gypsy, it says, "So I'm back to the velvet underground, back to the floor," which means my bed went back on the floor with the paper flowers and there's just a part of that there will never be again, except it does live in my house because it was so special. I mean, and the experience of watching, being it, because you were opening show, you got the right to stand on the side of the stage. So I got to stand on the side of the stage and watch Jimi Hendrix and Janis and the biggest, Creedence Clearwater, And I didn't really even know at that point that it was all in preparation for. That it was all in preparation for the reason that we're sitting here right now. But yes, it was an incredible and a beautiful time, and I'm sorry that everybody couldn't have been there.
Mick, you were around in the 60s for, the British explosion as music was really changing. What was that? And you were George Harrison's brother-in-law when the Beatles were hot and happening, and, John Mayall was hot and happening. I mean, all that stuff. What was that scene like in London?
Very fresh. I mean, much the same as situation that Stevie's relating to. Incredible amount of untapped energy, if you like, that was a nice innocence to it in terms of what this business is, and it is a business. Being a drummer, being a singer, being in a rock and roll band was, and that's why it's important to remember, that's what's very precious about times like that. There was it was a green situation, if you like. The pitfalls that happen within the business that spoil things, I think you've got to be very careful of that. I think that's one of the main things that I was aware of when in London everything was happening. The Stones were happening. You go and see the Yardbirds, and I happened to be sort of part of that. Not very well known at that point, but it was an incredible time.
Yeah, everything was changing. Music, fashion,
Yeah, and
kids.
I'm not trying to sort of sound like there's nothing happening in this day and age, but I have to really feel that it will never be like that. It's become another animal in terms of how to project oneself as a musician, if I'm keeping it to that structure. And there are few and far between in these days that really appreciate how to do it in the proper way, if you like. It's like being a well-trained animal. And it seems like a lot of people are misguided, and they end up being a little transient, where there's no depth to certain things.
And it becomes very easy to take it for granted. And see, because of our past history, anyway, for me, I will never take it for granted. I can't walk through the doors of the Fillmore and not feel like, like I'm walking into an incredible place. Because it's like what went on there was so magic that I can never take any of this for granted.
Because it meant something to you.
Because it meant so much to me
think-
then.
Yeah.
And I have managed to keep that little special thing in my heart, because without that, I don't think I would want to do this.
I think just quickly, just something that is happening in Australia. There is the availability of, there's a lot of bands that are quite evidently doing very well now in the United States, but they were part of something which was allowed to continue. There were small clubs, pubs that they're used to playing in. There was a very personalized thing. The fact that it's happened in this day and age is very gratifying to see. But that's very, very similar to that situation where it wasn't slick, where it was going and doing and being part of something very special. And there are a lot of great Australian bands that are having huge success, and what's infectious is that element, I think, which is inherited through that circumstance.
Right. That
Because they're just opening up now and going through what we went through